The best weapon in the game is coming to a Weapon Up event banner here as of tomorrow, so you should be really excited about that. We're going to talk about that more, as well as a new 5-star character, and 3 4-star characters are going to be on the next Character Up event banner. Now, this new character is Klee. She is a pyro-based character, and she uses a book. She is a mage. Her moves are mostly kind of leaving little landmines around the area, and she does do a pretty good amount of damage. If you've played through the majority of the campaign, there is, in fact, a level that allows you to try out and play Klee. So if you want to know what she's like, just keep playing through the campaign. You'll get a chance to try her for free before you decide to pull on the banner. Now, we are going to talk about whether or not this banner is going to be worth it to pull. Now, we need to discuss whether or not, in my opinion, it's worth it to pull on this banner. And I think by far the best way to do that is to look at the banner and look at the 4-star characters. Now, if you do 20 pulls, you will guarantee yourself a minimum of 2 purples. And how these banners work is the first time you get a purple, if it's not one of the banner up, the next time you get a purple, it will be. It is the same thing with the 5 stars. You already know this if you've been paying attention to the banner. So what that means is if you're going to do a decent amount of pulls, 20 plus, and you want one of the characters on this list here, I would pull. Before we talk about Klee, what we need to discuss is these 4-star characters and come to a conclusion whether or not these 4-star characters are worth pulling for. If you're free to play and you have been saving your pulls, you're really gambling at trying to get Klee, but we know for a fact if you have over 20 pulls, you're going to get one of these 4-star characters. So let's talk about those first. Before we continue and talk about the characters, it's important that you understand how elemental resonance works. For this reason, if you are trying to get a bonus from having 2 of the same type of elements in your party, you might want to look and see, are one of the main characters I'm using currently a same element as one of the 4 or the 5-star character, meaning water, fire, wind, or earth? If you're using one of those characters, you might have some additional reason to try to pull another character of that same element if you don't have 2 already. Let's give you an example. For instance, if you have, let's say, a Bennett, okay, and that's your only fire character, you might have a little bit more of a reason to pull for Klee. Cat just spilled my water all over my table. I guess that's a good time for a plug. If you're interested in seeing me get cut up more, I mean, she actually got me right there while I was cleaning up the water. If you're interested in seeing me get cut up more by my cat while I struggle to get through Genshin Impact videos, please consider subscribing. My goal is 50,000. I'm very close. Long story short, if you got one of the characters that are the same element as one of the characters on the Character Up event banner, you get a little bit of extra synergy, extra value, okay? That's my only point here. We need to talk about the water character first because I think he's the most slept on and important to talk about. His name is Xingqiu, and let me explain how he works. I'm not going to go through and read all of his moves word for word. That's probably not what you were wanting. You can do this yourself. Instead, I'm going to explain to you how it works. So you need to understand how his rain sword dynamic works. Effectively, how this character works is he creates rain swords around himself. And what these rain swords do is they're around the current character on the field. And yes, you can swap characters. They will stay. The rain swords do a number of things. One of which, when you receive damage, it depletes one of them and decreases the amount of damage you took. They also increase your character's resistance to being interrupted, which is very important for people with claymores with charged attacks, as well as 20% of your hydro-based damage will be converted to additional damage reduction. This damage reduction is in fact capped at 24%, and the maximum number of these swords is 3, which can be raised through constellations, which we'll talk about in a moment. His 2 passive talents are actually really good, and I think this is where people probably sleep on him a little bit. First of all, he is a healer. He does current character's HP based on 6% of Xingqiu's max HP. So what does this mean? It means when one of the rain swords is removed, remember 3 is the minimum, you get 6% back of the main character's health, the character who applied it, the hydro character, Xingqiu. Meaning, if we build this character with hydro damage plus HP, not only will that hydro damage double dip, okay, if you see what I'm saying, into the damage reduction, but we'll also get an increased max HP. He is a character that allows survivability for the character on the field without him having to be on the field at all. This is quite good. Now, his ultimate is even better because what it does is it creates the maximum amount of those rain swords. Each attack will trigger additional sword rain attacks, which do hydro damage, meaning it applies the wet status effect, right? Rain swords will remain at the maximum number throughout the ability's duration, And these effects carry over to other characters, meaning once again, you can ult and his ult goes to the next guy. There's not too many characters that their ultimate ability is for another character. This is really good. If you pull them, you're definitely going to build them with a Hydro damage goblet, and then max HP would be the remainder of the build. Now, I do believe, in my personal opinion, he needs constellations to be good, as I was talking about earlier. The first one increases the maximum number of rain swords. I think this is at the first point in which he becomes viable. I think you need the 4 rain swords in order to increase the amount of maximum damage reduction, as well as allow yourself to have a larger heal. This increases the heal by 33% because there's 3 swords going to 4, so that way you'll get a longer heal and a longer amount of damage reduction, okay? Remember, it's 24% is the cap, so if you can reduce 24% 4 times instead of 3 times, that's 1 extra big hit, okay? If you're receiving 5,000, let's just make it easy for the math, okay? Let's say you're receiving 4,000 damage, these swords will effectively put it right about 3,100 instead. And then you get, on top of the damage reduction, you get the heal back on it. Now, the constellations here, in my opinion, this one's not as important. It does extend the duration of rain cover by 3 seconds. I don't think the 3 seconds is insane. And the hydro resistance of enemies hit by sword rain attacks by 15% for 4 seconds. Again, the hydro damage isn't really what he's used for. Yes, you do build him with hydro damage, but you do that in order to increase the effects of his passive. Now, if we move on to Weaver of Verses here, increases the level of rain cover by 3. Again, it's just for the rain cover move. Now, Evo Soother increases the damage of rain cutter, okay, which is your basic E. Now, rain cutter itself is not the reason you don't use it for the damage, is where I'm going with this, okay? It increases the initial damage of it by 50%, which is actually a pretty big amount, because if you look at the ratio on the E, it's really not that bad if we look at it here. And keep in mind, I don't have his abilities leveled at all. If you take a look, 210 plus 239, it's a fairly hard-hitting ability if you do have attack on him, but you don't really build him with attack, so therefore I don't think Evo Soother is that important in my opinion, unless there's something I'm not seeing about that constellation. But if we move on to the 5th one here, it's another level upgrade. You know, many characters have these. Now, here's where it gets interesting, okay? On the end, activating 2 of Rain Cutter. Again, that is his E move, okay? If you activate 2 of the Sword Rain attacks, greatly increasing the damage of the 3rd, Xingqiu regenerates 3 energy when Sword Rain attacks hit enemies. So effectively, this plus Evo Soother does change the character from a 100% support character to a pseudo damage dealer. Think of this like, you know how some people say Fischl is a support because you use Oz and you don't actually really use her for the damage. However, Fischl can still be used to deal damage if she is one of the only damage dealer characters you have, or you don't have the perfect synergy character, she can still be done. In my opinion, I think this character is very similar, where if you get all 6 of the constellations, he in and of himself can become a carry, even though originally and, you know, ideally, when you look at his build, he is more than likely a good support, damage reducer, and healer. Let's talk about Sucrose next. Now, if we're going to talk about Sucrose, it is very important to remember one thing. Mages always consistently deal their type of damage on basic attack, meaning this character will, in fact, deal anemo damage on every basic. This can be confirmed just by looking at her basic and see it deals anemo damage. For that reason, if you're trying to build her damage, you probably want to build anemo damage, okay? However, once again, in my opinion, this is a more supportive type of character that you use for her abilities and her utility. Now, I'm not going to go through once again and read all of these, but basically her E and her ultimate ability do effectively the same thing. The E is going to bring people in, bump them up in the air. It's kind of like Venti's E, where it bumps them up in the air, but it sucks them in a little bit first. It doesn't really do that much damage. If you look at the scaler, it's 264. That's it, and it's a 15-second cooldown, okay? Whereas if you move to the 3rd move here, same deal, hurls an unstable concoction that creates a large wind spirit. Once again, it continuously pulls and launches nearby enemies. It does basically the same thing as the E, only it continues to do this. Now keep in mind, much with many of these wind characters, after they use their ultimate ability, whatever it comes into contact with, it does adapt to that type of element. And for that reason, she most likely should be used in combo with other people to properly get elemental reactions. Now, her constellations Some people think they're quite good. In my opinion, I get a little disappointed with her, if I'm being honest, okay? Maybe it's because I haven't seen a really great example of her yet, but let's go ahead and go through them. Now, the first one, it gains an additional charge, meaning you can use your E button again. You can use it twice. Amber has this as well, for instance, okay? The other one here increases the duration of your ultimate ability, the Forbidden. Here you go, Forbidden Creation, okay? That one is increase the duration. So the little guy that stays around pulling people in and bumping them up, dealing damage, is around 2 seconds longer. Okay, 2 seconds. Increases the level by level 3. There you go, just like one of those. Now here's where we start to get an okay one. Every 7 normal and charge attacks, Sucrose will reduce the cooldown of her E by 1 to 7 seconds. Okay, now I don't know how the 1 to 7 is done. I don't know if it's random. I don't know if it's based upon crits. I don't know if it's based upon how long it took you to do those 7 attacks. Personally, I do not know. Okay, I'm going to assume it's random, or else it would probably give you the how it would work, I would assume, okay, unless it's just a really bad translation. So I think this is actually pretty good. This allows you to use your E more and more when combined with the cooldown reduction, okay? Now look here, increases the level of it for the alt by 3. And her final one, check this one out. If the alt is out, it triggers an elemental absorption. All party members gain 20% elemental damage bonus for the corresponding absorbed element during its duration. So what does this mean? This means this is a character who is utility and boosts support for your other characters. For instance, a great combo I could see with this is using like Diluc with his Wolf's Gravestone, triggering damage by killing a character or bringing them below 30% HP, using your E to light the grass on fire, switching to Sucrose to shoot out her ultimate ability, which will continue to pull everyone in, changing to fire, as well as bumping it up, giving Diluc a 20% damage bonus. You could go back, something like that. It's a very rough example. I also see Sucrose as a great pick for Klee. The reason is Klee really works based upon a minefield. Okay, she throws out these little fireballs that you need people to run through. So if you throw out the fire and then you throw in Sucrose's alt into that, it absorbs that, brings them in, and will clump them into the landmines. For this reason, I think Sucrose is best when paired with Klee, you know, kind of ironically enough during this banner. I don't find her terribly exciting, but I know people have said they have got her to be a very good utility character. So I'm going to lean to other information I've seen online, as I have not really, in my personal opinion, used her enough to get a physical representation of how I believe this would work. But that is how I see her personally. All right, so Noelle is somebody that I actually did a hard 180 on. I thought she was quite bad as I was looking at her talents. And then I went and looked at her constellation. So why don't we go through this and explain? She's a Claymore user, does 4 basic attacks with a Claymore. Her charged attack does that circular spin AoE that goes whap, 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 whap in a circle, okay? That's important, remember that. Now, if we go on here to her E, or her first ability, let's get right into it. She summons Protective Armor, great. It dealing geo damage to surrounding enemies and creating a shield, great. So we have an AoE. The shield damage absorption skill is based upon her defense, meaning she gets tankier with more defense, great. That doubles down because defense reduces damage as well as increases the shield. So we have double levels of efficiency here, okay? When her normal and charged attacks hit the target, they have a certain chance to regenerate HP for all characters, on and off the field. So she's a healer too. Possesses 250% absorption efficiency against geo damage, aka she's made of geo. Geo doesn't hit that hard on her. And then this part is quite important. The amount of HP healed when regeneration is triggered scales based upon her defense, meaning you build geo, you get tankier, and you heal for more, and you do more damage. Now, if we move on to her ultimate here, check this out. This is where we start to get nuts. Gathering the strength of stone around her, she strikes enemies surrounding her within a large AoE, dealing geo damage. Okay, afterwards, she gains the following effects. So she does AoE of damage, larger attacks in AoE, converts attack damage to geo damage, and increased attack that scales based upon her defense. Basically, if she uses this ability, she now swings wider in a circle, does geo damage, and she gets bonus damage on top of it based upon how tanky she is. So if you build her really tanky, she gets bonus damage on both moves, okay? But now look how it pairs with her constellations. Check this out, okay? Take a look. First constellation, I got your back. While Sweeping Time and Breastplate, that's her E and her alt, okay, are both in effect, the chance of Breastplate's healing effects activating is increased to 100%, aka that heal is now a 100% of the time during the ultimate and the E ability. So you combine the two, she becomes unstoppable effectively. Now, check this out. Combat Maid decreases the stamina consumption of her charge attack by 20% and increase her charge attack damage by 15%. We already know she does crazy AoE with her charged attack. This is great. This synergizes with this, okay? Moving on to Invulnerable Maid, it just upgrades the level by 3, as we know they do. Now check this one out. When Breastplate's duration expires or is destroyed by damage, it deals 400% attack of geo damage to surrounding enemies. So if you build her with a Goblet of geo damage, now you have 400% attack of that geo damage again, okay, surrounding enemies. So she does lots of AoE. Look at this, level 3 again, but check this last one out. Must be spotless, okay? Sweeping time increases her attack by an additional 50% of her defense. Again, more defense, more damage. Additionally, every enemy defeated during the skill's duration adds 1 second to the duration, up to 10 seconds. Meaning you can increase this, okay, all the way up to 10 seconds. Check this out, okay? So here we go, Constellation, sweeping time, right? So check this out. Now you go to talents, you go to the alt, look at this ability right here, skill tributes, cooldown, 15 seconds, duration, 15 seconds. Do the math, okay? Additional 10 seconds, but it's 15. Wait, the duration's 100% of the time. Yes, that's right. You can use it all of the time, okay? And now check this out. Look at her talents. When she's in the party, and we haven't even got to the passive yet, so this is crazy. When she's in the party, but not on the field, the character that is on the field, let's say Diluc's your main guy, right? He's on the field, he drops below 30% health, bang, he gets a 20-second shield that's 400% of her defense. Meaning, again, you build defense, you're helping somebody else, and this happens once per minute. So you could combine this with Barbara. You got Barbara on the team, automatically revives 100% HP. You got this chick on the team that gives you a 30%, or excuse me, a 400% of her defense shield. You're just not going to die, all right? Look at the other passive. Every 4 normal or charged attacks hits would decrease the cooldown of Breastplate by 1 second. Hitting multiple enemies with a single attack is only counted as 1 hit, aka 1 second reduction per swing, basically, in an AoE. So if you sweep through 3 people, 1 second reduction, okay? Now, if you look at the move here, we go skill attributes, the duration 12, the cooldown 24. You only have to reduce it by 12 seconds to have 100% uptime, meaning you only have to hit 12 times. If you guys have done that swing, you're familiar with how quickly you can get those to rack up, okay? Meaning you effectively have, with Max Constellation, almost a 100% uptime on both the moves, making you extremely, extremely tanky, hard to interrupt, and dealing a lot of damage. Okay, let's talk about Klee real quick. I had to get this information from the wiki because, as it stands, she's not currently in the game, so I don't get it. Take a look at her. Yes, I have played through her trial. No, I do not remember the moves, so let's go ahead and take a look here. Now, if we look, normal attack throws a thing that goes boom when they hit things, perform up to 3 explosive attacks, dealing AoE pyro damage. AoE in a basic's very good, by the way. Consumes a certain amount of stamina, deals AoE pyro damage to enemies after a short casting time, so it's going to be a bigger 1-bomb throw. And then the plunging attack, as she gathers the power of pyro, plunges toward the ground from midair, dealing damage in her path, deals AoE pyro damage upon impact with the ground. It sounds similar to the Mona's, where she kind of turns into a blue little ball and falls down. I'm assuming she turns into a red ball, does the same thing. Now, if we look here, combat talent and elemental skill, Jumpy Dumpty. Jumpty Dumpty is tons of boom band fun. When thrown, Jumpty Dumpty bounces thrice, igniting and dealing AoE pyro damage with every bounce. So he goes boom, boom, boom. It's like a bouncing doll, and each one's going to go AoE, AoE, AoE. Got it? On the third bounce, the bomb splits into mini mines. This is the mine thing I was talking about earlier. The mines will explode upon contact with the enemies or after a short period of time, dealing AoE pyro damage, and you get 2 charges. Her ultimate ability is this image here. It summons this little like red beam that constantly attacks for you. It's like a red 4-leaf clover, basically, and that kind of continually attacks for you. If we actually read the move list here, it says, Klee's Blazing Delight for the duration of this ability continuously summons sparks and slash to attack nearby enemies, dealing AoE pyro damage. This is kind of like Oz, basically, for Fischl. Now, the passives here is when her E and normal attacks deal damage, Klee has 50% chance to obtain an explosive spark. The spark is consumed by the next charge attack, which costs no stamina and deals 15% increased damage. So if every now and then she gets bonus damage on a charge attack, very similar to Zig's passive, actually, interesting enough. When her charge attack results in crit, all party members gain 2 elemental energy. This is pretty nice. And then displays the location and nearby resources unique to Mondstadt on the minimap. I believe this used to display treasure chests from what I remember I'm not sure if they still have that though, okay? Now we need to move on and look at the constellations. Attacks and skills have certain chance to summon sparks that bombard enemies, dealing damage equal to 120% of sparks and splashes damage. This is actually really good. The reason this is really good is because this is on the first constellation. Normally on the first constellations, they kind of give you a bummer one, but they give you a really good first constellation here. 120% of damage of the ultimate ability. That's quite nice here. And the second one is when you're being hit by his E, the mind decreases enemy's defense by 23% for 10 seconds. This is, again, on the second constellation is quite good. The third one's the boring. You increase the E by 3 levels. If Klee leaves the field during the duration of sparks and splash, her departure triggers an explosion that deals 555% of her attack as AoE pyro damage. AKA, what you want to do with this is you swap with her right before her ultimate is over and you do massive AoE damage. That is actually really good. 555% is pretty nuts, okay? So you probably want pyro damage goblet for that reason. Now the fifth one is just going to increase the level by 3 for the ult. And then look at this, Blazing Delights, number 6. While under the effects of her ult, other party members will continuously regenerate energy. Okay, when Sparks and Splash is used, all party members will gain 10% pyro damage for 25 seconds. Meaning, you compare her with Xiangling, who will also give bonus pyro damage as well, plus having 2 pyro damage bonus characters will allow for 25% increased attack. So the free fire character pairs very well with this character as well. My closing opinion is this. If you're interested in the purple characters, you're free to play, you save maybe 20 polos. Consider getting one of the new purple characters. I think they're not bad. I will let you know that they get better with constellations, as with every character. I know it's an obvious statement, but these ones do sort of rely on it. That being said, Klee is very good with constellations as well. So this banner does strike me as a banner, as a banner for somebody who is going to want to pull a lot on this banner in order to get both constellations for Klee. Probably want at least the first 2. Personally, I think the 4th one is quite good. And to be honest, the 4-star characters go from like decent and fun to fairly nuts as of the last constellations. The one that strikes out to me is Noelle, the one from the beginner's poll. For me, kind of strikes out. This is the one that gets really nuts on the 6th one, but I wouldn't sleep on Xingqiu either. I think he's quite good as well. With that being said, I hope this breakdown was objective, informative, and maybe you learned something. Please consider subscribing and hitting the bell in order to help me out, as well as help yourself out to see my videos. YouTube does not do a good job of showing all subscribers my information, so you want to hit that bell. With that being said, thank you so much for sitting through this, and I hope to see you on the live stream today.